Welcome to Living, Learning, and Leading with Purpose with me, Dr. Wajida Small. This channel is for those who want to live fulfilled lives, grow personally and professionally, and develop into influential and impactful leaders in their organizations, industries, and communities. Through my blog, podcast, and books, I share the best stories, lessons learned, and advice to help you live, learn, and lead with purpose. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Leading with Purpose podcast with me, your host, Dr. Wajida Small. In this week's episode, I want to talk about leading your own life and what that means and how that translates into your leadership of others. This episode came to me as a part of my reflection process. Every once in a while, I'll reread a book, go back to some notes that I've written on the content that I've read. And a couple of weeks ago, I actually went to my own book, Our Leadership Journey, Shared Stories, Lessons, and Advice for Women of Color. To be quite honest, I've actually given some really good advice in this book, and I needed some of it. I needed some of it for myself because I had begun to question some things about my life, question some things about my leadership. I really got into a headspace where I just wasn't sure. And that happens every now and again. But when that happens for me, it just becomes it becomes really, really deep. And for a very long time, I was sure. And I'm usually very sure about myself, usually very sure about the decisions that I make. And a couple of weeks ago, I was just in a place of, I just don't know. I just don't know. I don't know about me. I don't know about what I'm thinking. I don't know about how I'm going to move forward. I don't know what my life is going to look like. I just had a lot of I don't know questions, and that scared me. And I said, I need some advice. And then I said, girl, why don't you go and read your own? So that is exactly what we are going to do today. We are going to talk about the advice that I'm giving other people that I actually need to take for myself. So let's get started. So I talked about reflecting, right? And going back and needing advice and taking my own advice, which I don't think many of us do, or at least if we do, it's not as frequently as we need to. In any event, I went back to my book, Our Leadership Journey, Shared Stories, Lessons, and Advice for Women of Color. And in particular, I went back to chapter 14. And chapter 14 is titled Becoming Who You Were Meant to Be. And in the book, I start off by talking about some of the results from my doctoral research, the surveys and the assessments that I've sent to the women that participated and what came out of it, specifically the demographic information. But in particular, toward the end of the section with the results, I talk about the answers to a questionnaire. So I'm going to read it to you. On the questionnaire, I presented the women with 7 statements. These are 3 that I found to be the most revealing. I identify myself as a leader. Others identify me as a leader. I believe I can be successful in a leadership role. 98% of the women said they identify themselves as a leader. 96% stated others identify them as a leader, and 98% stated that they believe they can be successful in a leadership role. And then I go on to write, we know we can be successful in anything we work hard for and put our mind to. We have the confidence in ourselves and know that others have confidence in us as well. All we have to do is set our plan in motion. I'm going to stop there before I go on and explain why those 3 resonated with me. The main reason those three resonated with me was because it showed how we felt about ourselves. When you think about all of the external factors that play against us, all of the mind trash, and I talk about mind trash in episode 1 of season 2, so go back and listen to it. All of the mind trash that we have about ourselves that we allow people to put into our brains, we know what we can do. We know what we are capable of. We know what we have in us that makes us the amazing, and I know I use the word amazing a lot, but like the phenomenal women that we are confident and we know what we're capable of, but every now and again, something just creeps in. It creeps in and it makes us question. And I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I honestly cannot pinpoint in the moment what it was. If I think about it, I probably can. But something creeped into my mind that just made me doubt myself. It made me doubt myself to a level that really, really scared me. Y'all, I was just like, girl, what are you doing? What is going on right now? What is going on? You need to stop it. So I went, reread, did some reflections, and now I am talking to you all about it. So, following the section of the results from the research, some of the quantitative and qualitative results, there's a section called Leading Your Own Life. And I write, the women I spoke with during the qualitative phase of my research expressed what the quantitative results revealed. Several women, as they talked about their current journey, the challenges they've faced, and where they'd like to be in the future, saw the importance of taking their destiny into their own hands. What exactly does that mean? For me, in that moment, I felt that I had lost control. And we all know the saying, you can only control yourself, you can only control your own thoughts and behaviors and actions. And I tell people that all the time. I need to tell myself that. Doesn't always happen, but we can only control what's within ourselves. We can only control our own thoughts, our own actions, our own behaviors. At the end of the day, I felt like I had lost control. And my anxiety spiked through the roof. So I needed advice, and this time I decided to take my own. So I went through the demographics, I went through the results, and so again, taking our destiny into our own hands. And one of the participants talked about taking the reins and leading her life, and about the natural transition from life leadership to leading within an organization. And she says, if you are essentially able to lead your own life in the direction you are satisfied with, or in the direction you desire, then you can. I think that you can lead others. First, if you're unable to lead your own life or your own circumstances and find the solutions, then you're not necessarily going to be very successful at leading others. And I loved having a conversation with this particular participant and getting to this place, because even as she and I spoke, it revealed a lot for me. Now, mind you, this was a short while ago. Either way, I think as I think about it and reflect on it, it still resonates with me. It still resonates with me deeply. And I came back to this and I started reading this again. And I'm going to read you another one. Let me read you another one, actually. This is from another participant. There are some things you can control and there are some things you cannot control. I think successful navigation is probably a combination of your determination to do what you want to do and doing it. I think any woman who really wants to be a leader and really wants to go into corporate America can do it, but they may have to sacrifice some things. Having said that, I think at the same time, we have to be realistic. We don't have any control over someone else's bias, and I think performance can overcome that to a certain degree. You have no control over that, so you have to rely on experience, education, and the way you approach it to overcome those things. So between those two statements, and these were from broader interviews, there were a couple of themes that I gleaned from that, and why I felt it was important for me to go back to this and remind myself and remember. We have to have control over our own life. Sometimes we don't know what that looks like. At its simplest form, it's, I think, an understanding of what you actually have control of. Your own thoughts, your own actions, your own behaviors, if you will, right? And then when you are in a situation or presented with something where there are external factors, it's realizing that you don't have control over those external factors. And I think for me, there was a lot going on outside of me that felt very overwhelming, that put me in this place of, I don't have any control. I have no control over my own life. I feel like I'm losing it. Y'all, I was losing my mind on some next level, like a story for another day. Either way, I hadn't taken stock of, wait a second, it's not me, it's all of these other things that I don't have control of. How do I start to identify what those things are? Kind of, what's the term? Kind of separate them out, put them in boxes, if you will. In my control, outside of my control. Factors that are internal, factors that are external. Things I am able to do, things I am not able to do, and the reasons why I can't do them. Are they reasons of my own, or are they reasons because of things that I cannot control? And so one thing that I actually really like about the book is at the end of each chapter, I give lessons and advice, and I'm going to read you the lessons and advice for this chapter, but then I also have chapter reflections. And these are reflection questions. So for whoever is reading it, it gives you an opportunity to read the material. There are some prompts for you to start to reflect on your own, again, as you are going through your leadership journey. And even though a lot of the context is in the space of work and organization and professionals, it's very relevant to your own life. And what I did with this is I finished all of this, I went to the chapter reflections, and I actually started to reflect on the questions. So first, I want to read to you the lessons and advice. So at the end of each chapter, there are 3 lessons and 1 piece of advice. Lesson 1. When you get to a place where you can accept the things that you are not within control of and work on changing the things that you can, you will be in a much better mental and emotional space. Lesson 2. You have to know what you want to do before you go after it. Determination and a plan can work in your favor. Lesson 3. Only you can define the path you take and how you operate. No one else can do so. And here's my advice. There will always be people, places, things, and situations that will try to deter you from taking the next step in life. You have to identify what is within your control to change. For those things that aren't, see them for what they are and move on. You are only in control of your own beliefs, thoughts, behaviors, and actions. And as the saying goes, if you believe it, you can achieve it. Believe in yourself and take action toward achieving your goals. I think that's pretty good advice. It might not be complex or, things that are just so philosophical. It's very simple. It's also very practical, I think. And I have to remind myself of that. And then I have chapter reflections. And the first question is, do you feel that you are a leader within your life? To be quite honest, sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. I think the times that I don't is when I get really overwhelmed by the outside. And these are the things, again, that I cannot control. And I'm human. I sometimes need a reminder that there are things that aren't within my control. And I have to understand that, and I have to take it for what it is, understand it, process it, and move on. And like many of you, sometimes it's difficult for me. And in that moment in my life a couple of weeks ago, it was difficult for me. And I can admit that. But at the same time, I have to recognize that that's not something that's going to go away. And I don't think it can, because we can't get away from the outside. There's no way that I can foresee or predict or think that anyone can honestly say that their external environment does not have an impact on them. I think the best thing for us to remember is how much control we have over that. And when we recognize we don't have much, if any, understand it, process it, let it go. The next question: what behaviors can you engage in to be more in control of your journey? I think for me, it is doing more of this. It is doing more of the self-reflection. I cannot stress enough how important that is. I do it quite frequently. I don't do it as, I'll say, process driven as I should in terms of writing it down. Sometimes I'll just sit and reflect and muse on things and think about it. But I think it's important for me to write those things down. It's important for me to kind of go through my journey, think about what I've gone through, what were the factors that played a role in each of the spaces that I was in. Were they positive spaces? Were they negative spaces? How do I get out of those spaces when they are negative? Understanding, again, going back to what's within my control and what's not within my control. The next question: what factors do you believe have an impact on your destiny? What factors do you have control of? I am a firm believer that we have full control over our own destiny, and it's what we allow to impede on our journey to reach that destiny it's what's going to impact it, right? When we know what our destination is, and it's okay, sometimes we don't know what our destination is, but when we know what our destination is, we can make a plan to get there. Sometimes that plan is just a really conscious effort to do the work, to put in the work, to get to that space, incremental, long-term, whatever it is. I think it's also important for us, and what I've realized that's important for me, is to anticipate roadblocks, because I don't think for us, especially as women of color, as a Black woman, there is no way in hell that there isn't going to be a roadblock placed in front of me. And it's knowing that there might be a couple of things that I'm going to trip over, but it's not going to stop me. And it's not letting it stop me. It's not letting it stop you. It might be a hurdle that you have to jump over. It might be a wall you have to climb over, but it's not going to stop you from reaching your destination when you have that plan, when you have that determination, when you have that confidence that you can get there, because that's what you want to do. The other question: what is your process for identifying what is within and outside of your control? Again, going back to self-reflection, I think beyond that, for me, my process is, I generally, and with a lot of things in my life, and this may sound weird, but I do like a cost-benefit analysis. What are the costs and benefits of every action that I take? And sometimes you just have to pay the cost to reap the benefit. Sometimes that is sacrifice. And to be quite honest, I think I've sacrificed a lot of a lot of my personal goals to reach my professional goals, and to be quite honest, a lot of us do. A whole nother story about how we were socialized and all the rest of that stuff. But a lot of us do. And as I reflect on that, I honestly can't say that I regret any of those sacrifices. Sometimes, I get questions, and even myself, sometimes I wonder, if I made a different decision, should I have made a different decision? What would my life have been like? And to be quite honest, I love my life. I like where my life is. I like this space that I am in personally. I like this space that I am in professionally. I have made so many great strides, and I've made those strides because of the decisions that I made. So do I want to go back and change them? No, because it probably would not have led me here to this space where I am able to walk, live, breathe, be in my purpose. And I honestly can't picture my life any other way than what it actually is in this moment. Another question in the reflection section: how do you move past detractors that are not within your control that prevent your emergence as a leader? And I'm going to change that and say prevent your emergence as anything, as a leader in your life, a leader in your organization, a leader in your community, a leader in your industry. Detractors that keep you from living your best, detractors that keep you from living your best damn life. Because listen, there are folks out here that seriously try to stop us, and you've heard me say this before, that stop us from being great. So how do I move past the detractors that are not within my control? I said this before. It really is recognizing what they are, recognizing what is not in your control. Accept it. Take it in. Process it. I think what we don't do is the processing of it. What does this actually mean? What does this mean for me? How does this impact me? And I think when we can do that effectively, all of those other things just kind of, they flow, right? All of those other things will just be easy for us. It'll help us move past those things a lot quicker with a lot less effort when we have that level of recognition. And the last question is, last couple of questions. The last question: what does taking ownership of your journey look like? What do you feel are the required actions needed to get to the leadership position that you want? We're going to skip that last part because this is less about getting to the leadership position that you want, but really taking ownership of your destiny, ownership of your journey, ownership of your path. And for me, a lot of it is just deep internal work, really understanding what I know about myself, how I feel about myself. And another episode, which I'm actually really excited to talk to you all about, self-love and just the self, really, and I'll just say the deep self. I'll say the deep self, but it really is knowing you, knowing what you want, knowing what you don't want, knowing what's acceptable, knowing what's not acceptable to you, knowing what is valuable, knowing what is not valuable in terms of, your time and your space and your energy. It's taking full ownership of everything that is you. And a couple of weeks ago, I lost sight of that. And to be quite honest, that happens for me every now and again. But when I lose sight of it, it's important for me to find it back, find something that reminds me of all of those things, of myself, of my journey, of my path, of my desires, of my purpose, everything. Reminding myself of who I am, the value that I bring to the spaces that I inhabit, to the relationships that I have, to the work that I do. Knowing what's within my control and what's not in my control, accepting that things are not within my control, and then letting them go. And it's not simple. At least for me, it's difficult at times. Sometimes it's easy because it's like, girl, what are we doing right now? What are we doing? Take a step back, take a deep breath, look in the mirror, remind yourself of how amazing you are. And then others just kind of like, I don't understand. What is happening right now? Why do I feel like this? And it's okay. And that happens. But when you're in that moment, be in that moment for just a moment. And then look in the mirror and remind yourself of absolutely how amazing you are and all of the value that you bring. Thank yourself for being who you are. And tell yourself, I love you. And I love you all. And thank you for sharing this space with me and giving me your time and your support. I love this. I really do. And I am so grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will catch you all next time. Bye. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. It has been great sharing this space with you. I hope that you have taken what you've needed so you can share what you've learned and that you are on your way to living, learning, and leading with purpose. I encourage you to stay connected with me. Please remember to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. You can also follow us on Instagram at Leading with Purpose Podcast. And don't forget to visit my website, www.wajitasmall.com, where you can subscribe to my mailing list. Till next time.